Hello, and welcome to the channel. My name is James Jelliff, and if you're anything like me, you've probably spent more time than is strictly healthy staring at a field, wondering if you're doing it all completely wrong. Today we're tackling a subject that sounds dreadfully complicated but is, in fact, brilliantly simple. Rotational grazing. It's a fancy term for what is essentially a sheep buffet, moving them from one all-you-can-eat salad bar to the next before they can turn the place into a muddy wasteland. It's not just for sheep, mind you. This works wonders for all sorts of livestock that enjoy a good munch on some grass. Now, before you click away thinking this is going to be some dry academic lecture full of charts and Latin names for weeds, let me assure you it's not. This is about practical, real-world farming. It's about getting more from your land, having healthier animals, and, dare I say it, making your life a tiny bit easier in the long run. We're going to look at how moving your animals around a bit more can transform your pastures from a sad, overeaten patch of dirt into a lush, thriving ecosystem. It's about working with nature, rather than constantly fighting it with a bag of fertilizer in one hand and a bottle of wormer in the other. So stick with me. I'm going to show you how this simple system can lead to fatter, happier sheep, greener fields, and fewer vet bills, which is something we can all get behind. We'll cover everything from the basic how-to the nitty-gritty of how many woolly jumpers you can actually fit in a field without causing a total disaster. It's farming, but with a bit more thought and less mud, hopefully. Let's get into it. Right, let's get the definition out of the way so we all know what we're talking about. Rotational grazing, in its simplest form, means splitting a big field into smaller fields or paddocks. You then put all your animals in one small paddock and let them have at it. They eat everything. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the stuff they normally turn their noses up at. They're like children at a birthday party who've been told they can only have cake for 10 minutes. They don't mess about. They graze it down properly and evenly. And then, and this is the crucial bit, you move them. You open the gate to the next paddock, a fresh, untouched restaurant of green, and they flood into it with an enthusiasm you normally only see when a pub landlord shouts last orders. The paddock they've just left is then given a holiday, a proper long rest. This isn't just letting them wander from one end of a field to the other over a month. This is a planned, strategic movement. It's the difference between organized troop movements and just letting a mob run riot. The whole point of this rest period is to let the grass recover. And I don't just mean grow back a bit. I mean properly recover. The roots need to dig deeper, the plants need to build up their energy reserves, and the whole ecosystem of the soil gets a chance to breathe. It's a cycle of intense, short-term pressure, followed by a long, peaceful recovery. Imagine running a marathon, then being forced to lie on a sofa and eat crisps for 3 weeks. That's what you're doing for your pasture. This system mimics how herds of wild animals would have grazed for millennia, moving constantly, mobbing an area, and then leaving it alone for a very long time. It's clever, really. Annoyingly clever. So, why go to all the faff of setting up fences and moving animals around like you're some sort of four-legged traffic warden? Well, the benefits are, and I don't say this lightly, massive. First and foremost, the health of your pasture goes through the roof. When sheep are left in one big field, they're picky. They'll eat all the tasty clover and sweet grasses down to the nub, and completely ignore the tougher, less palatable stuff. Before you know it, your field is just a collection of weeds and bare patches. With rotational grazing, they eat everything because they have to, which keeps the weeds in check and gives the good grasses a chance to thrive during the rest period. Your field becomes a dense, diverse, and resilient carpet of green. Then there's the animal nutrition. A constantly fresh salad bar is much better for them than a tired, trampled field. In a new paddock, the grass is at its absolute peak, packed with sugars and proteins. They get a massive nutritional hit with every move. This means they gain weight faster, produce better milk, and are just generally healthier, more robust creatures. You're essentially giving them a perfectly balanced meal every few days, designed by nature itself. This leads to what farmers are really interested in: productivity. Healthier animals that gain weight efficiently mean more profit. It's that simple. You're turning grass into money more effectively. It's alchemy, but with sheep. And don't forget the soil. Constantly grazing the same patch of ground compacts the soil, turning it into something resembling a concrete car park. The long rest periods in a rotational system allow the soil to recover. The deeper roots of the rested grasses create channels for air and water, and all that manure the animals left behind gets broken down by worms and microbes, becoming brilliant, free fertilizer. You end up with healthier soil that can hold more water, which is a godsend during a dry spell, and it reduces runoff and erosion when the heavens inevitably open. You're not just farming sheep, you're farming the soil itself, and the sheep are just your woolly assistants. Now for one of my favorite topics, parasites. Specifically the gut worms that are the bane of every sheep farmer's existence. The traditional approach is to simply drench the entire flock with chemical wormers on a regular basis. It works sort of, but the worms are getting cleverer, they're developing resistance, meaning our chemical weapons are becoming less effective every year. Plus, chucking all those chemicals into our animals and by extension our land just feels wrong. It's a chemical arms race and we're starting to lose. Rotational grazing, however, offers a brilliantly simple, non-chemical solution. Here's the science bit, try to keep up. Most gut worms have a fairly simple life cycle. An infected sheep poos out some eggs onto the pasture. These eggs hatch into larvae, which then crawl up blades of grass waiting to be eaten by another unsuspecting sheep. And the whole miserable cycle starts again. The crucial thing to know is that these larvae can't live forever on the grass. They need a host, and they generally don't crawl more than a few inches up the grass stem. So by grazing a paddock down and then moving the sheep off it for a long time, say 30 to 60 days, you are breaking that life cycle. By the time the sheep return to that first paddock, most of the worm larvae from the last visit will have simply died of old age and starvation. It's genius. You're using time and space as your weapon. Furthermore, because the sheep are moved onto taller grass, they are grazing further from the ground, well above the worm zone where the highest concentration of larvae lurks. This dramatically reduces the number of parasites they ingest in the first place. This doesn't mean you can throw your wormers away entirely, but you can reduce their use massively, saving you money and helping to preserve their effectiveness for when you genuinely need them. It's a win-win. Alright, stocking rates. This is where the art and the science of farming have a bit of a disagreement. If you ask a scientist how many animals you can have per acre, they'll give you a maddeningly complex formula involving dry matter intake, pasture growth rates, and rainfall predictions. If you ask an old farmer, he'll probably just squint at the sky, scratch his chin, and say about 7. The truth, as ever, is somewhere in the middle. There is no single magic number. The number of sheep or cows or goats you can keep depends entirely on your farm. Your soil type, the quality of your grass, how much rain you get, and the time of year all play a huge part. As a very, very rough rule of thumb for a typical British pasture, you might start by thinking about 6 to 10 ewes per acre over the course of a year. But with a good rotational grazing system, you can often increase that number significantly, perhaps up to 15 or even more in a really productive system. The key is not the number of animals per acre of your whole farm, but the density of animals in the specific paddock they are in at that moment. You want high stock density for a short period. This means cramming them in, making them eat everything, and then moving them on quickly. This high-density mobbing is what stimulates the best regrowth. So how do you figure it out for your own place? Start small and observe. That's the best advice I can give. Set up a few small paddocks and watch what happens. How quickly do they eat it down? How long does it take to recover? You need to be a grass manager more than a sheep manager. In the spring, when the grass is growing like mad, you might move them every day. In the dry heat of summer or the cold of winter, you might leave them for a week and your rest periods will need to be much, much longer. It's a constant dance with the seasons. Forget fixed numbers, learn to read the grass. The grass will tell you everything you need to know. Now I know I've been banging on about sheep, mostly because they are the primary source of my own agricultural misery and occasional triumph. But it would be a mistake to think that this rotational malarkey is just for the woolly ones. The exact same principles apply brilliantly to pretty much any animal that eats grass. Cattle, for instance, are fantastic rotational grazers. In fact, some would say the system is even better suited to them. They are less picky than sheep, and their sheer weight and mobbing instinct can do wonders for trampling down old dead grass and stimulating new growth. You just need a slightly more robust fence. They're not great respecters of flimsy tape. Goats are another one. They are browsers as much as grazers, which means they'll happily munch on bushes, weeds, and other things a cow or sheep would ignore. Using them in a rotational system can be a fantastic way to clear overgrown pasture and bring it back into a more manageable state. You can even get creative and run what's called a flurd, a mixed group of sheep and cattle. The cows act as lawnmowers, taking the long stuff, and the sheep follow behind like little vacuum cleaners, tidying up the shorter grasses and forbs the cattle missed. This is particularly good for parasite control, as most cattle parasites don't affect sheep, and vice versa. The core concept remains unchanged, whatever the beast. Graze hard, rest long. The only things that change are the details. Your paddock size, the height of your electric fence, and the length of your grazing and rest periods will all need to be adjusted for the specific animal. A herd of massive Hereford cows will demolish a paddock far quicker than a small flock of Shetland sheep, so your rotations will need to be faster. But the philosophy is universal. Manage the grass, not the animal, and you will be rewarded with a productive, resilient, and healthy farm. No matter what four-legged lawnmower you choose to employ. So there you have it, rotational grazing. It's not a magic bullet that will solve all your farming problems overnight. This is farming after all, and something is always guaranteed to go wrong. But it is a powerful, logical, and sustainable tool that can genuinely transform your patch of land. It requires a bit more thought, a bit more planning, and a bit more walking about moving fences. But the rewards in terms of pasture health, animal well-being, and your own bottom line are, I think you'll find, more than worth the effort. It's about being an active participant in the ecosystem of your farm rather than just a spectator. I want to encourage you to give it a go. You don't have to convert your entire farm tomorrow. Just fence off a small area, split it into 2 or 3 paddocks, and see what happens. Observe, learn, and adapt. Let the land and the animals be your teachers, and please share your own experiences in the comments below. Tell me about your successes, your glorious failures, your battles with weeds and fences. I want to hear all of it, because that's how we all learn. This is a community, and sharing our knowledge is the most valuable thing we can do. Finally, the bit I'm contractually obliged to say. If you found this video useful or even mildly entertaining, do me a favor and hit that like button. It apparently helps the great and powerful YouTube algorithm smile upon me. And for more ramblings on farming, grass, and the general chaos of agricultural life, please consider subscribing to the channel and ringing that little notification bell so you don't miss the next installment. Thank you for watching, and happy grazing.